The Grand Osiris Hotel stood like a monument to forgotten elegance at the edge of the city, where the old district bled into urban decay. Its Gothic revival architecture was an anachronism among the steel and glass towers that had sprouted around it like weeds choking a garden. I'd booked a room there for 3 nights while attending a conference on medieval European history. My specialty, though lately it felt more like an obsession than an academic pursuit. The conference had run late. My presentation on blood rituals in Eastern European folklore had been received with polite applause and a few raised eyebrows. Now, past midnight, I was exhausted, my mind still buzzing with the questions I'd fielded about Vlad Tepes and the historical origins of vampire mythology. The hotel's corridors seemed longer in the darkness, stretching endlessly before me like the throat of some sleeping beast. I blamed the wine. 3 glasses during the networking dinner had left me pleasantly fuzzy around the edges, my usually sharp sense of direction dulled just enough to be dangerous. The elevator had deposited me on what I thought was the 7th floor, but the hallway felt different. Narrower, older, the carpet beneath my feet more worn, its pattern faded to ghost images of what might have once been roses or perhaps drops of something darker. The brass numbers on the doors gleamed dully in the amber light of wall sconces that flickered like real flames, though I knew they must be electric. 709. 711. 713. My room was 714. I fumbled with the keycard in my pocket, my fingers clumsy. The hallway seemed to tilt slightly, or perhaps that was just me. There. 714. The number plate looked tarnished, older than I remembered from this morning. Had it always been that dark bronze color, almost black in the shadows? I slid the keycard through the reader. No click, no green light. I tried again. Nothing. Frustration bubbled up through my wine fog. Modern technology in a building this old never worked quite right. I tried the handle on impulse, expecting it to be locked. It turned smoothly, easily, as if the mechanism had been oiled recently. The door swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a room that was definitely, absolutely, catastrophically not mine. My room had been modern, bland corporate neutrality with a queen bed, a desk, a television, beige walls that could have been anywhere in the world. This was something else entirely. This was a chamber torn from the pages of the very manuscripts I'd spent my career studying. The space was vast, impossibly so, far larger than any hotel room had a right to be. Stone walls rose to a vaulted ceiling lost in shadow, their surface rough-hewn granite that spoke of medieval craftsmanship. Heavy tapestries hung between Gothic arched windows, their threadwork depicting scenes I recognized immediately: the hunt, the feast, the transformation. Crimson candles burned in iron sconces mounted on the walls, their flames unnaturally steady, casting a warm red glow that made everything look as if it were underwater, submerged in wine. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the far side of the room, its curtains drawn back to reveal sheets of deep burgundy silk. Velvet furniture, a chaise lounge, 2 high-backed chairs, and ornate writing desk, was arranged with deliberate precision. The air smelled of old roses, aged parchment, and something metallic I couldn't quite place. Copper, perhaps. Or iron. For a moment, I simply stood there, my hand still on the door handle, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. Had I somehow stumbled into a different hotel entirely? Some kind of themed suite? The Grand Osiris did advertise its historical character, but this seemed excessive. That was when I saw them. 2 women occupied the room with a kind of presence that made the lavish surroundings seem like mere stage dressing. They weren't just in the space. They commanded it, owned it, breathed life into it in a way that made everything else fade to insignificance. The first stood near the window to my right, one pale hand resting on the stone sill as she gazed out at the city lights below. She was tall, her figure draped in a gown of midnight blue velvet that hugged curves which seemed designed to break hearts and end kingdoms. Her hair fell in waves of pure black down her back, so dark it seemed to absorb the candlelight rather than reflect it. When she turned to look at me, her face was a masterwork of aristocratic beauty, high cheekbones, full lips curved in an expression of amused surprise, and eyes that glowed with a crimson light that couldn't possibly be natural. The second woman sat in one of the high-backed chairs near the fireplace, where flames I hadn't noticed before crackled with blue-tinged heat. She was no less striking than her companion, though where the first was all midnight elegance, this one embodied autumn fire. Her hair was a cascade of deep auburn shot through with copper highlights, tumbling over shoulders left bare by a dress of wine-red silk that seemed to move with its own liquid life. She had her legs crossed with casual grace, one foot, clad in a heel sharp enough to be a weapon, swinging slowly back and forth. Her eyes, also crimson, fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Both women were pale. Not merely fair-skinned, but pale in a way that seemed luminous, as if their flesh were carved from marble and lit from within by some cold internal fire. And both were smiling at me with expressions that were equal parts welcoming and predatory. "Well," said the one by the window, her voice like honey poured over gravel, cultured and rich with an accent I couldn't place, Eastern European certainly, but older than any dialect I'd heard in my research. "This is unexpected." The seated woman tilted her head, studying me the way a collector might examine a rare butterfly that had just fluttered into her net. "Indeed it is, Lucia. We weren't expecting visitors tonight. At least, not this kind of visitor." My mouth had gone dry. Every instinct I possessed was screaming at me that I'd made a terrible mistake, that I should apologize profusely, back out of the room, and never speak of this embarrassment to anyone. But my body seemed to have other ideas. My feet remained rooted to the threshold, my hand frozen on the door handle. "I'm so sorry," I managed, my voice coming out rougher than intended. "I thought this was my room. Wrong floor, I think. I'll just—" I started to back away, but the movement seemed to trigger something. The woman called Lucia moved with a speed that shouldn't have been possible, crossing the distance between us in a blur of midnight velvet. Suddenly she was in front of me, one hand pressed against the door above my head, her body forming a barrier between me and escape. Up close, I could see details I'd missed: the perfection of her skin, unmarred by any flaw or pore, the way her pupils were slightly vertical like a cat's, the fact that she cast almost no shadow despite the candlelight. "Don't be hasty," she said, and her smile widened, revealing teeth that were just a little too white, canines just a little too sharp. "You've already come all this way. It would be terribly rude to leave without at least introducing yourself." The other woman had risen from her chair and was approaching with more measured grace, her heels clicking softly on the stone floor. "Lucia has a point. Besides, the door has a tendency to stick. From this side at least. You wouldn't want to struggle with it unnecessarily." I tried to step back into the hallway, but my body wouldn't obey. It wasn't fear that held me exactly, though fear was certainly present, coiling in my gut like a cold serpent. It was something else, something that overrode my rational mind. These women radiated a kind of magnetism that seemed to affect me on a primal level, shutting down logical thought and replacing it with a strange dreamlike fascination. "My name is Marcus," I heard myself say. "Dr. Marcus Brennan. I'm here for a conference. Medieval history. I really should." "Medieval history," the auburn-haired woman repeated, her crimson eyes lighting up with what seemed like genuine interest. "How delightful. A scholar. Lucia, did you hear? We have a scholar in our midst." Lucia leaned closer and I caught her scent. Roses and something darker, older, like the air in crypts I'd visited for my research. "I heard Vivian. How perfectly convenient. Tell me, Dr. Brennan, what area of medieval history captures your imagination?" The question should have been innocent enough, but the way she asked it, with that slight emphasis on captures, made it feel like a trap. Still I answered because some part of me wanted to impress these impossibly beautiful, impossibly strange women, wanted to show them I was worthy of, what? Their attention? Their time? Their mercy? "Blood rituals," I said. "Specifically, the folklore and historical practices surrounding vampirism in Eastern Europe. The intersection of superstition and actual historical events. How legends arise from truth." The silence that followed was profound. Both women stared at me with expressions I couldn't read. Surprise, certainly, but also something that might have been amusement or perhaps irony. Then Vivian began to laugh, a sound like wind chimes made of crystal, beautiful and slightly unsettling. "Oh, this is too rich," she said, glancing at Lucia. "Do you think the universe has a sense of humor, sister?" "I'm beginning to believe it must," Lucia replied, though she wasn't laughing. Her expression had grown more serious, more calculating. She reached out with one hand and I felt cool fingers touch my chin, tilting my head up so I was forced to meet her eyes. "Dr. Brennan. Marcus. You've stumbled into something rather extraordinary tonight. A mistake, you called it." Wrong floor, wrong room. But perhaps there are no mistakes. Perhaps you were meant to find us. I don't understand, I said, though I was beginning to, in the way you understand things in nightmares, with a logic that makes perfect sense until you wake. Vivian was beside me now, on my other side, and I was flanked by both of them, trapped between their bodies and the still open doorway that seemed to grow further away with each passing second. She reached out and gently pushed the door closed. The sound of it clicking shut was like a coffin lid sealing. You will, she said softly. Come, sit. Let us talk about your research, Dr. Brennan. Let us discuss blood and ritual and the truth behind legends. After all, you've spent so long studying the subject from the outside. Perhaps it's time you gained a more intimate perspective. They led me deeper into the room, and with each step, I felt reality bending around me like heated glass. The door was closed now, and though no one had locked it, I hadn't heard the click of a bolt or the turn of a key. I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't be leaving until they permitted it. The knowledge should have terrified me more than it did. Instead, I felt a strange calm settling over my panic, like frost forming over dark water. Vivian guided me to the chaise lounge, her hand barely touching my elbow yet steering me with irresistible gentleness. The velvet beneath me was soft as sin, and I sank into it with a sensation of surrendering to something inevitable. Lucia moved to the sideboard, an ornate piece of furniture I hadn't noticed before, all dark wood and silver inlay, and poured liquid from a crystal decanter into 3 glasses. The liquid caught the candlelight, glowing like garnets. Wine? Lucia said, catching my glance. Only wine, I assure you. We have no need to drug our guests, Dr. Brennan. Our company is persuasive enough on its own. She distributed the glasses, keeping one for herself, handing one to Vivian, and offering the third to me. I took it because refusing seemed both pointless and rude. The crystal was cold against my palm, but the wine inside radiated warmth. I didn't drink. Not yet. Vivian settled into the high-backed chair she'd occupied when I first entered, once again crossing her legs with that same deliberate grace. Lucia remained standing, one hip leaning against the sideboard, both of them positioned so that I was the focal point of their attention. Being studied by them felt like being under stage lights, exposed, vulnerable, yet oddly thrilling. You said I was meant to find you, I began, choosing my words carefully. My academic training was kicking in, the part of me that conducted interviews and analyzed primary sources. If I was in danger, and every instinct said I was, then information was my only weapon. What did you mean by that? Direct, Vivian observed, swirling her wine but not drinking. I like that. So many people dance around what they truly want to know, afraid of the answers. You strike me as someone who spent his life chasing uncomfortable truths. It's the nature of historical research, I replied. The past is full of uncomfortable truths. We excavate them, examine them, try to understand them in context. And vampirism, Lucia interjected, her crimson eyes fixed on me with unblinking intensity. That's one of your uncomfortable truths, isn't it? Tell me, in all your research, all your academic pursuit, what have you concluded? Are we myth or memory? Fiction or fact? The way she said, "we" made my heart skip. The implications hung in the air like smoke. I took a breath, then a sip of the wine to buy myself time. It was extraordinary, rich and complex, with layers of flavor I couldn't begin to identify, and an aftertaste that lingered like a kiss. Academically, I said slowly, vampirism is understood as a confluence of factors. Misunderstood diseases like porphyria or rabies. Decomposition processes that medieval people didn't understand. The need to explain sudden deaths in communities. Cultural anxieties about blood, death, and sexuality given supernatural form. Very textbook, Vivian said with a slight smile. But that's not what I asked you. Not what you truly believe. You've stood in the crypts, haven't you? Walked through the graveyards of Wallachia and Transylvania. Read the accounts that never made it into official records. Interviewed the old women in mountain villages who still put garlic over their doors and refused to speak certain names after dark. What do you believe, Marcus? Not Dr. Brennan the academic. You. How did she know about my field research? My travels? I'd published papers, yes, but nothing that detailed my personal experiences, the interviews I'd conducted in languages most academics never bothered to learn. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. I believe, I said carefully, that there's often truth at the heart of legend. That our ancestors weren't stupid or entirely superstitious. That some myths persist because they're rooted in experiences we no longer know how to interpret. Lucia pushed off from the sideboard and began to pace, her movements fluid and hypnotic. Diplomatic. But you're avoiding the question. Do you believe in vampires, Dr. Brennan? In creatures that drink blood and live for centuries? In things that should be dead but walk and speak and feel? The question hung between us like a blade. This was the moment I realized. The moment where I either clung to rational explanations or acknowledged what every nerve in my body was screaming at me. These women, with their impossible beauty, their luminous skin, their eyes that glowed with their own light, their too sharp teeth and predatory grace, weren't human. Couldn't be human. Until about 10 minutes ago, I said quietly, I would have said no. Vampires are metaphor, cautionary tale, the dark mirror of human desires and fears. But now, Vivian prompted, leaning forward, her eyes bright with something that might have been hope or hunger or both. Now I'm sitting in a room that shouldn't exist inside a hotel I thought I knew, drinking wine with two women who, I trailed off, unable or unwilling to complete the sentence. Who are exactly what you've spent your life studying, Lucia finished for me. She stopped pacing and stood before me, close enough that I could see the candlelight reflecting in her eyes, close enough that I could see she wasn't breathing. Say it, Marcus. Academic rigor demands precise language. Name what we are. My hand was shaking slightly, making the wine tremble in its glass. Vampires, I whispered. You're vampires. The words seemed to fill the room, to resonate in the stone and the shadows. For a moment, neither woman moved. Then Vivian smiled, a genuine smile, not the predatory expression I'd seen before, but something warmer, tinged with what might have been relief. There, she said softly. Was that so hard? The truth spoken plainly. Yes, Dr. Brennan. We are vampires. Creatures of legend made flesh. Or rather, creatures of flesh made into legend. The very subjects of your research sitting before you. How does it feel? How did it feel? I took inventory of my emotions, finding them tangled and contradictory. Terror, yes, a deep, primal fear of predators who stood above me in the food chain. But also exhilaration, the rush of discovery that any researcher feels when theory becomes reality. Curiosity that overrode common sense. And underneath it all, a strange attraction I didn't want to examine too closely. Surreal, I managed. Impossible. And yet here we are. You're going to kill me, aren't you? Drain my blood? Is that why you won't let me leave? Lucia laughed, a sound without humor. If we wanted you dead, Dr. Brennan, you would have died the moment you crossed that threshold. We're not young fledglings who lose control at the scent of blood. We've walked this earth for centuries. We've learned patience, restraint, and yes, selectivity. Then what do you want with me? Vivian set down her wine glass and rose from her chair, moving to stand beside Lucia. Together, they presented a united front, two predators considering prey that had unexpectedly proven interesting. You asked if you were meant to find us, Vivian said. The truth is more complex. This room, this space exists between. It's anchored to the hotel, yes, but it's not entirely part of it. A pocket of old world preserved in the new. We've maintained it for decades, a refuge when we travel. The door appears only to those who meet certain criteria. Scholars usually. Researchers. People who've touched the edges of our world through study, who've developed a resonance with it. The hotel keycard didn't work, I said, understanding dawning. The door was already open. You opened it, Lucia corrected. Your belief, your years of research, your fascination with us. It created a key. The door recognized you, even if you didn't recognize what you were doing. You didn't enter the wrong room, Marcus. You entered exactly the room you were ready to find. I stood, suddenly needing to move, to process. Neither woman stopped me as I walked to the window Lucia had been standing beside when I first entered. Outside, the city sprawled below, lights twinkling like stars brought to earth. But something was wrong with the view. The buildings were different. Older architecture mixed with modern, as if multiple eras existed simultaneously. And the sky was too dark, stars too bright, like looking at the world through tinted glass. Where are we? I asked. Not just which room. Where are we really? Between, Vivian repeated. Between past and present, between your world and ours. When you crossed the threshold, you stepped partially out of time. Minutes here might be hours out there or seconds. Flexible. Useful for conversations that require discretion. My academic mind latched onto the logistics, a life raft of rationality in a sea of impossibility. How many of you are there? Do you have a society? A culture? How do you remain hidden in the modern age with cameras and databases and... So many questions, Lucia said, but she was smiling now, genuine warmth in her expression. You really are a researcher to your core, aren't you? Even faced with impossible beings who could kill you without effort, your first instinct is to learn. It's refreshing. Most people who stumble into our world are too busy screaming or begging or trying to bargain for their lives. Would any of those responses change my situation? No, Vivian admitted. But your response might. We've existed for a long time, Marcus. Lucia and I have walked through empires risen and fallen. We've seen the Black Death, the World Wars, the rise of the digital age. We adapt. We survive. But surviving isn't the same as living, not really. We miss connection. Conversation with someone who understands, at least intellectually, what we are. You're lonely, I said, the realization sudden and surprising. Lucia's expression flickered, something vulnerable showing through the predatory confidence for just a moment. Lonely is a human word for a human emotion. But yes, in essence, immortality is isolating. Those we love age and die. Those we turn off and can't handle the transformation. Other vampires are complicated. We have our own politics, our own hierarchies and grudges that span centuries. Finding someone new, someone untainted by our history, someone who might understand without being consumed by fear, that's rare. So I'm what? Company? A curiosity? Potentially, Vivian said, moving to stand beside me at the window, so close I could feel the coolness radiating from her skin. Or potentially something more. That depends on you. On what you choose. Choose. I turned to face her, finding her inches away, her crimson eyes holding mine. What choice do I have? You said I can't leave until you allow it. The door, Lucia said from behind me, will open when you truly wish to leave. When you're ready to return to your ordinary life, your conference, your research from the safe distance of academia. But you have to want it completely. No hesitation. No curiosity left unanswered. Can you honestly say you want to walk away right now? To spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd stayed? She was right and I hated her for it. Because despite the danger, despite every survival instinct screaming at me to run, I didn't want to leave. I wanted answers. I wanted to understand. I wanted, and this was harder to admit, to be in the presence of these extraordinary beings, to be seen by them as something more than prey. What are you offering me? I asked. Vivian reached out, her cool fingers tracing the line of my jaw with feather-light touch. Conversation. Truth. A glimpse behind the veil at what you've spent your career trying to understand. One night with us. Talk, nothing more unless you choose otherwise, where you can ask questions and receive honest answers. Where you can sit with living history and learn what no book can teach you. And then you decide, Lucia said, now standing on my other side, the two of them bracketing me again, but this time it felt less like being trapped and more like being held. You can leave with your memories intact but your person unharmed. Return to your life. Publish your papers. Though of course no one would believe you if you spoke of this night. Or. My voice came out rougher than intended. Or you can choose to know more. To step further into our world. To become part of it in ways that would transform you irrevocably. Vivian's eyes searched mine. But that's not a decision for tonight. Tonight is simply about whether you're brave enough to stay. To learn. To see us as we truly are. I thought of my hotel room, the real one, bland and safe and boring. I thought of the conference, the academic papers, the polite discussions of dead things and ancient superstitions. I thought of the life I'd built, careful and measured and intellectually rigorous. And then I thought of standing in this impossible room with these impossible women, on the threshold of knowledge that could shatter everything I thought I understood about the world. Ask me, Lucia said softly. Ask me the question you most want answered. The one you'd put in your research but don't dare to hope is real. I knew the question immediately. It had haunted me through every archive I'd explored, Every interview I'd conducted. Is immortality real? Can you truly live forever? Both women smiled, and in that moment, with the candlelight playing across their ageless faces, I saw the weight of centuries in their eyes, sorrow and joy and experiences beyond counting. Yes, they said in unison. And it's both better and worse than any story you've ever read. Then I'll stay, I said. For tonight. I'll stay and listen and learn. God help me, I'll stay. Vivian's smile widened. God doesn't often visit rooms like this, Dr. Brennan. But you're welcome nevertheless. Come, sit. Let us tell you a story about the true history of the world, the one they don't teach in universities. They told me their story in layers, like archaeologists excavating a site, carefully, deliberately, revealing one truth only after the foundation for it had been properly laid. We returned to our seats, forming a triangle in the room's center, glasses of wine in hand, though only I drank mine. The vampires held theirs as props, I realized, a gesture toward humanity they no longer required. Lucia spoke first, her voice taking on a cadence that suggested she was reciting from memory, perfect, crystalline memory that held centuries without degradation. I was born in 1347, she began, in a small village outside of Prague. Bohemia it was called then. The world was different, smaller, darker, more brutal than you can imagine from your textbooks. I was the daughter of a cloth merchant, which meant I was neither noble enough to be valuable nor poor enough to be invisible. A dangerous middle ground for a woman. She paused, looking down at her wine glass as if seeing something in its depths. I was 19 when the plague came. The Black Death. You've studied it, I'm sure, but you haven't smelled it. The stench of rotting flesh as bodies piled in the streets faster than the living could bury them. The screams of the dying. The way entire families would be vibrant one day and corpses the next. I watched my father die first, then my mother, then my younger brother. I waited for the fever to take me too. I wanted it to. Death seemed merciful compared to living in that hell. But you didn't die, I said quietly. No. He came instead. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw the echo of old pain, old terror. A vampire, though I didn't know what to call him then. We called them Strigoi, Moroi, Yupper, different names in different languages for the same thing. Creatures that walked in human skin and drank human blood. He found me in my family's home, surrounded by corpses, barely alive myself. And he offered me a choice, die with my family or live forever beyond death. You chose to live. I chose not to die. There's a difference. Lucia's smile was bitter. I didn't understand what I was agreeing to. How could I? He turned me. The process is neither quick nor pleasant, I won't describe it in detail, and then he disappeared. Left me to figure out what I'd become on my own. It took me decades to understand what had been done to me. Decades more to accept it. And centuries to embrace it. I was scribbling notes in my mind, cataloging details with the part of my brain that never stopped being a researcher. The Black Death as a turning point. The opportunistic nature of some vampires. The trauma of transformation without guidance. This was first-hand historical testimony beyond price. And you? I asked Vivian. Your story? She uncrossed her legs and leaned back in her chair, her auburn hair catching the candlelight like captured fire. Different era, similar desperation. I was born in 1598, in Scotland during the reign of James I. You'd know that period for its witch trials, its paranoia, its religious fervor that saw demons in every shadow. My family was minor nobility, but my father had made enemies at court. Political enemies who whispered that our family practiced dark arts. It was a death sentence dressed in legal proceedings. Her voice remained steady, but I could hear the undercurrent of old rage. They came for us when I was 17. Arrested my father, my mother, my two younger sisters. I escaped only because I wasn't home when they arrived. I'd been in the village visiting a friend. By the time I returned, my family was imprisoned, awaiting trial. Everyone knew what trial meant: torture, confession forced through agony, and execution by fire. How did you become a vampire? I asked, though I suspected the answer. I tried to save them, Vivian said. I sought out every rumor, every whispered story about creatures of darkness who might have power to help me. I was desperate enough to bargain with the devil himself if it meant saving my family. And eventually, my searching led me to Lucia. My gaze snapped to Lucia, seeing her anew. You turned her. I did, Lucia confirmed. By then I'd been vampire for over 2 centuries. I'd learned control, power, and how to navigate the world of the undead. I'd also learned loneliness. When this fierce young woman appeared, demanding I help her save her family in exchange for anything I wanted, I saw an opportunity. A companion. Someone I could turn who came to it willingly with full knowledge of the price. Did you save them? I asked Vivian. Your family? Her expression hardened. We tried. Lucia turned me, taught me enough to survive the transformation, and we attacked the prison where they were held 3 days later. But 3 days was too long. They'd already broken my father on the rack. My mother and sisters were scheduled to burn the next morning. We killed the guards. We opened the cells. But my father died of his injuries before dawn. My mother, she stopped, swallowing hard despite no longer needing to breathe. My mother was so broken by torture that she didn't recognize me. She saw my changed eyes, my teeth, and thought I was a demon come to collect her soul. She begged God to protect her from me. I'm sorry, I said and meant it. I made her forget, Vivian continued. Used the powers I barely understood to cloud her mind, made her believe she'd escaped with the help of sympathetic guards. I gave her and my sisters money, saw them safely to the coast where they could flee to Ireland. Then I watched from the shadows as they built new lives, married, had children, grew old. I watched my mother die 40 years later, an old woman surrounded by grandchildren who never knew I existed. That's when I truly understood what immortality meant. It's not just living forever. It's watching everyone you love become dust while you remain unchanging. The room had grown heavier with their words, saturated with sorrow that had nowhere to go, no outlet in beings who couldn't die. I set down my wine glass, afraid I might drop it. My hands felt numb. How many vampires are there? I asked, needing to shift to something more clinical, more distant. In the world, I mean. Is there a population estimate? Lucia considered the question. Fewer than you might think. Thousands, perhaps, spread across the globe. We're not prolific in our creation. Turning a human is expensive. It requires tremendous energy, a bond of blood that links maker to fledgling. Most vampires never turn anyone. Those who do, like me, usually create only 1 or 2 over the span of centuries. And many don't survive the transformation or the first years after. Why not? Turning amplifies what you are, Vivian explained. If you were cruel as a human, you become monstrous as a vampire. If you were weak-willed, you become feral, unable to control the hunger. If you were broken by trauma, you shatter completely. It takes a specific kind of person to weather the transformation and emerge functional. Most don't qualify. And those who do. How is vampire society structured? Lucia's eyes gleamed with appreciation for the question. Now you're thinking like the scholar you are. Vampire society, such as it is feudal, ancient hierarchies based on age and power. The older you are, the more powerful you become. Physical strength, mental abilities, resistance to things that harm us. I'm over 6 centuries old. Vivian is over 4. That makes us elders, though there are vampires far older than us walking the earth. Some claim to have been turned during the Roman Empire. A few whisper of origins in ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia. What about the traditional weaknesses? I couldn't help myself. It was the question every researcher wanted answered. Sunlight, garlic, crosses, running water. What's real? Vivian laughed, genuine amusement lighting her face. Direct, aren't you? Very well. Sunlight is real, though not as dramatic as your films suggest. We don't burst into flames instantly, but prolonged exposure burns us severely and will eventually kill us. Young vampires are more vulnerable. Lucia and I can tolerate dawn and dusk, even brief exposure to full sun if we're well fed and prepared. But it's painful, weakening. We're creatures of the night by biology, not just aesthetics. Garlic is nonsense, Lucia added. A myth born from its use as a medieval disinfectant. Crosses and holy symbols only work if the wielder has absolute faith. And even then, it's not the object but the faith itself that creates a barrier. Force of will can repel us if the will is strong enough. Running water, uncomfortable but not deadly. We can cross it, we can swim, we simply prefer not to. It dampens our abilities somehow. As for stakes through the heart, decapitation, fire, those will kill us, yes. But they'd kill anything. I was absorbing it all, fitting pieces together. Mirrors? Photographs. We reflect perfectly well, Vivian said dryly. We appear in photographs, on video, in any medium you'd care to test. That myth came from old superstitions about mirrors trapping souls. Since we were believed to be soulless, we supposedly cast no reflection. In truth, we're simply dead flesh animated by something science doesn't yet understand. But dead flesh still interacts with light. What about the blood? I asked. Why do you need it? Is it sustenance or something else? The atmosphere in the room shifted. Both women exchanged glances, and I got the sense I'd asked something significant. That, Lucia said slowly, is the crux of what we are. Blood is everything. It's food, yes. We require the nutrients, the energy it contains. But it's more than that. Blood carries memory, emotion, essence. When we drink, we take in fragments of the person. Their experiences, their feelings in that moment. It's intimate. More intimate than sex, more invasive than any human connection you've experienced. It's also addictive, Vivian added. Not physically but psychologically. The connection, the rush of taking in another's life force, it can consume you if you're not careful. Young vampires often kill their victims, drain them completely because they can't stop. They lose themselves in the pleasure of it. Learning control is the first and most difficult lesson of vampire existence. Do you kill when you feed? Not in centuries, Lucia said. We've learned to take only what we need, to leave victims alive with their memories clouded, believing they've had too much to drink or fainted. It's safer for us. Missing persons attract attention, and less traumatic. Though I won't pretend to be moral. I've killed thousands over my lifetime. In earlier centuries when I was young and angry and drunk on power. I'm not proud of it, but I can't change it either. It's part of my history. And I've killed my share, Vivian admitted. Though fewer than Lucia. I had her as a guide, a teacher. She taught me restraint before I could develop worse habits. But yes, we're predators, Marcus. We exist by taking from humans. You should understand that fully before you romanticize what we are. But I was already romanticizing it, and we all knew it. The academic in me was cataloging data, yes, but the human in me was drawn to these powerful, immortal beings who'd shared their trauma and their truth. Who'd trusted me with centuries of secrets. Who looked at me not as prey but as someone worth talking to. Tell me about vampire abilities, I said. Beyond strength and speed. You mentioned mental powers. Lucia nodded, setting down her untouched wine and standing. Easier to demonstrate. Watch. She gestured, and one of the candles across the room extinguished, then reignited without anyone touching it. A book on the desk lifted into the air, floated toward me, and settled gently in my lap. I looked down to find it was a medieval manuscript, the kind that belonged in a museum, its pages illuminated with intricate artwork. Telekinesis, I breathed. Minor psychokinesis, Lucia corrected. Most vampires develop some form of mental ability as they age. Mine manifests as manipulation of physical objects. Small things mostly. I'll never throw cars with my mind, but I can manipulate tools, locks, weapons. Useful. And mine, Vivian said, her eyes suddenly gleaming brighter, is more cerebral. She stood and approached me, kneeling so we were at eye level. May I touch you? I nodded, not trusting my voice. She reached out, placing her cool fingers against my temples. Her eyes held mine, crimson drowning blue. Think of a memory, she whispered. Something significant. Let it fill your mind. I thought of my grandmother who died when I was 12. Her kitchen, the smell of baking bread, the way she taught me to read Latin from her old missal. The memory was vivid, precious. Vivian's eyes widened slightly. She loved you very much. She wanted you to understand that the past isn't dead, that it speaks to those who listen. She gave you your passion for history. I jerked back, breath coming fast. How? I can read surface thoughts, access memories, influence emotions to a degree. It's not mind control. I can't make you do anything you don't want to do. But I can see into you, understand you, connect with you on a level that's normally impossible. It's how we cloud memories after feeding. How we sense danger or lies. How we know you're not plotting to harm us even as you sit here learning our weaknesses. That's terrifying, I said honestly. Yes, she agreed. It is. But also beautiful in its way. To truly understand another being even briefly. to be understood in return. Most creatures spend their entire existence isolated in their own minds. We don't have to. She returned to her seat, leaving me trembling slightly. The manuscript was still in my lap and I looked down at it, focusing on something concrete. The illuminations were exquisite. Scenes of medieval life painted in gold and crimson and lapis blue. "This is real," I said. "From the 14th century, I guess. How do you have this?" "I knew the monk who created it," Lucia said simply. "Brother Thomas of Prague. He was 60 years old, going blind, desperate to complete his masterwork before his eyes failed entirely. I gave him my blood, not enough to turn him, just enough to heal his vision temporarily. He finished the manuscript and gave it to me as payment. He died 3 years later, believing I was an angel sent by God to answer his prayers." "Were you?" She smiled, sad and ancient. "I was a vampire who appreciated beautiful things and was moved by an old man's devotion to his art. Angel or demon, we're neither. We're simply what we are." The conversation continued deep into the night, or what felt like night, though I'd lost all sense of time's passage. They told me of the vampires they'd known, a catalogue of immortals that read like a secret history of the world. A vampire at the court of Louis XIV who'd influenced the Sun King's fashion choices, turning European aristocracy toward the pale aesthetic. A vampire scholar at the Library of Alexandria who'd saved certain texts before the fires, preserving knowledge in private archives. A vampire artist in Renaissance Florence who taught human painters techniques that became the foundation of classical art. They spoke of vampire politics, the territorial disputes, the ancient grudges, the councils that met once a century to arbitrate conflicts and establish rules. Of vampire hunters, both human and vampire, who sought to destroy their kind or regulate it. Of the delicate balance they maintained, staying hidden while living among humans, careful never to take too much, never to reveal too much, never to disrupt the mortal world enough to provoke organized response. "We survive through discretion," Vivian explained. "The modern world with its cameras and forensics makes that harder but also easier in some ways. So much information, so much noise. One more mysterious event gets lost in the static. And we've adapted. We have lawyers, accountants, identities we rotate every few decades. Some of us work in law enforcement or government, making sure investigations into unusual deaths go nowhere. We've woven ourselves into the fabric of society so thoroughly that removing us would tear holes in systems humans depend on." "You make it sound almost benevolent," I observed. "It's survival," Lucia corrected. "Not benevolence. Though some of us do try to do good with our extended existence. Vampire doctors who can work for decades perfecting techniques. Vampire activists who can sustain efforts across generations. Vampire artists and musicians who bring beauty into the world. We're not all monsters, though we're not all saints either. We're individuals, Marcus, as varied as humanity itself. We simply have more time to become who we're going to be. I don't know when the decision formed, whether it was gradual or sudden, whether it was rational or purely emotional. But at some point during those hours of conversation, I realized I didn't want this night to end. Didn't want to return to my ordinary life with its ordinary concerns. I'd spent years studying the supernatural from safe academic distance, and now I was being offered something I'd never dared to hope for. Entry into that supernatural world. "You mentioned," I said carefully, "that I could choose to know more, to step further into your world. What would that mean specifically?" Both women grew still, their attention sharpening on me with predator focus. Lucia spoke first, her voice carefully neutral. "It could mean many things depending on how far you want to go. The simplest would be continued contact. You return to your life but we remain in touch. We could teach you more, introduce you to others of our kind, show you the hidden world that exists alongside the human one. You'd be what we call a familiar, a human who knows about vampires, who serves as helper or friend or companion. Or," Vivian added, her crimson eyes searching mine, "it could mean transformation, becoming what we are. Immortal, powerful, free from human limitations. But also cursed with human necessities twisted into something darker. Never aging, never dying, but also never fully belonging to humanity again. It's not a choice to make lightly, Marcus. It's not a choice to make tonight." "Why not tonight?" I asked. "If I'm going to choose, why wait?" "Because this night exists outside normal time," Lucia said. Outside normal judgment. You're in shock, overwhelmed, intoxicated by novelty in our presence. Whatever you decide here might not be what you decide with a clear head and time to think. If you truly want to enter our world, either as familiar or as vampire, that choice should be made with full understanding of the cost. What is the cost? I asked. For transformation, I mean. Specifically. Vivian leaned forward, her expression serious. Everything you are becomes memory. Your human life, your human relationships, your human desires and fears and hopes, they become past tense. You'd have to leave behind everyone you know or watch them age and die. You'd have to give up sunlight, normal food, the thousand small things that make up human existence. You'd have to kill to survive or at least harm, taking blood from the unwilling. And you'd have to live with the knowledge that you're no longer part of the natural cycle. You're an aberration, a dead thing walking, sustained by violating the living. But, Lucia continued, you'd gain time. Centuries, millennia perhaps, to learn and grow and become something beyond human limitations. You'd gain power, physical and mental abilities you can't imagine. You'd gain perspective watching history unfold from a position outside it. And you'd gain us. Companions who understand what you are, who'll walk beside you through ages while the mortal world churns and changes around you. It's a trade, Marcus. Everything you are for everything you could become. Only you can decide if that's a worthy bargain. I stood, needing to move, to think. I walked to the window again, looking out at the impossible city, the blended timescape of old and new. My reflection looked back at me from the glass. Ordinary, human, unremarkable. In the reflection, I could also see Lucia and Vivian behind me, their reflections perfectly clear despite the myths. Two immortal beings who trusted me with their truth. If I chose to become familiar, I said, to maintain contact but stay human, what would that look like? We'd give you a way to reach us, Lucia replied. A number that always works, an email that always reaches us. We'd meet periodically when our travels align. We'd introduce you to others of our kind who you might learn from. You'd become part of the hidden world, a bridge between vampire and human. Some familiars help us maintain our cover identities. Some conduct research or handle logistics. Some simply serve as friends, as connections to humanity we might otherwise lose. And the danger? Significant, Vivian admitted. Vampire politics can be deadly. Hunters exist, both human and vampire, who might target you to get to us. And the knowledge itself is dangerous, carrying our secrets, seeing the darkness that underlies the world. Many familiars don't survive long. Not because we kill them, but because the weight of what they know destroys them. Madness, suicide, carelessness that gets them killed by other vampires. It's not a safe choice. But it's reversible, I said. If I chose to be familiar, I could later choose transformation. Or you could choose to walk away entirely, Lucia said. We could cloud your memories, make this night seem like a dream. You'd return to your ordinary life with nothing but a vague sense of missing something. It would be a kindness in some ways. I turned to face them fully, leaving my reflection behind. I don't want kindness. I want truth. I want knowledge. I've spent my entire life trying to understand the supernatural world from the outside, building theories on fragments and folklore. You're offering me entry into that world. How could I possibly refuse? Vivian smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. Many would refuse, Marcus. Most people, given absolute proof of vampires, would run screaming. The fact that you're standing here, considering partnership with predators, says something about you. I'm just not certain what. It says I'm a fool, I said, surprising myself with a laugh. Or a visionary. Or both. But I know myself well enough to know I'll regret it for the rest of my life if I walk away now. So yes, I choose to know more. I choose to become familiar, to enter your world. Teach me. Show me. Let me be part of this. Lucia crossed to me in 3 fluid strides, stopping close enough that I could count the flecks of gold in her crimson eyes. You're certain? Once you cross this threshold fully, there's no returning to ignorance. You'll carry our secrets, our burdens. Your life will never be the same. I'm certain. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then welcome, Dr. Marcus Brennan, to the world behind the veil. Your education begins now. They taught me the first rule of the hidden world. Secrecy is survival for vampire and familiar alike. Lucia produced a small leather journal from the desk, its pages yellowed with age but still serviceable, and handed it to me along with a fountain pen that looked older than my great-grandparents. Write down your questions, she instructed. Everything you want to know, every curiosity your research has stirred up. But this journal never leaves your person. You don't photograph its pages, don't transcribe it digitally, don't share its contents with anyone outside the vampire world. It's your private grimoire. If you're captured by hunters or compromised by hostile vampires, you destroy it. Burn it, tear it to pieces, swallow the ashes if you must. Understood. I took the journal, feeling its weight, not just physical but symbolic. This was real. This was happening. Understood. The second rule, Vivian said, rising from her chair and moving to a carved wooden chest beside the bed, is that you maintain your ordinary life. You don't abandon your work, don't become obsessed with the vampire world to the exclusion of humanity. Familiars who lose themselves in our world become liabilities. You're more valuable to us, and safer, if you remain grounded in human society. She opened the chest and withdrew something that caught the candlelight, a pendant on a silver chain. As she approached me, I could see it more clearly, a circular medallion etched with symbols I didn't recognize, swirling patterns that seemed to shift when I looked at them directly. This is a mark of protection, she explained, standing before me. It identifies you as under our care to other vampires who might encounter you. It won't stop someone determined to harm you, but it will make most think twice. We're known in the vampire community. Our reputation carries weight. May I? I nodded and she fastened the chain around my neck. The metal was cool, the pendant settling against my chest with surprising warmth, as if it had absorbed body heat from Vivian's hands. The third rule, Lucia said, is communication. We've given you a way to reach us. Use it if you're in danger, if you encounter other vampires, if you learn something you think we should know. But don't abuse it. We're not your personal protection service. We're offering you entry into our world, but you still bear responsibility for your own safety and choices. How do I contact you? I asked. Lucia withdrew a card from somewhere in the folds of her dress. I hadn't seen a pocket, but then, vampires probably had ways of carrying things I couldn't perceive. She handed it to me. The card was plain black with a single phone number embossed in silver. No name, no other information. Call or text that number anytime, she said. It forwards to a service we maintain. One of us will respond within hours, usually minutes. In true emergencies, include the word sanctuary in your message. That triggers an immediate alert. I pocketed the card carefully, already memorizing the number. Old habits from fieldwork. Never rely solely on written records. Now, Vivian said, returning to her seat, we need to mark you more permanently. The pendant is a symbol other vampires recognize. But you need something that works on a deeper level, something that binds you to us and us to you. A familiar bond. My heart rate kicked up. What does that entail? Blood exchange, Lucia said bluntly. A small amount, not enough to begin turning you, just enough to create a link. You'll drink a few drops of mine and I'll take a few drops of yours. It creates a connection that lets us sense each other to some degree. If you're in mortal danger, I'll feel it. If I call you through that bond, you'll hear me in your mind. It's intimate, but not irreversible. The bond fades over time if not renewed. Will it change me? I asked. Physically or mentally? Slightly, Vivian admitted. You'll be a bit faster, stronger, hardier than ordinary humans. Your senses will sharpen. You'll age more slowly, not immortality, but you might look 40 when you're 60. And you'll become sensitive to vampire presence. You'll feel us when we're near, sense the supernatural more readily. Think of it as standing with one foot in our world while keeping the other in humanity. There's no going back from this, Lucia added. Once the bond is formed, you're marked permanently. Even if the bond fades, other vampires will be able to tell you've been bound. You'll smell different to us, taste different. You'll be recognized as familiar rather than ordinary human. It affects how vampires see you, how they interact with you. Some will respect it. Others will see it as a challenge. I thought about it for all of 3 seconds. Every warning they'd given me, every cautionary note, slid off my desire to dive deeper. This was what I'd spent my life searching for, tangible connection to the supernatural world. How could I hesitate now? I'm ready, I said. Create the bond. Lucia and Vivian exchanged glances, some communication passing between them that I couldn't read. Then Lucia nodded, something like respect crossing her features. Very well. Sit down. Stay calm. This won't hurt, but it will feel strange. I sat on the chaise lounge, my heart hammering against my ribs. Lucia knelt before me with inhuman grace, taking my hand in both of hers. Her skin was cool, smooth as marble, surprisingly gentle. She turned my hand palm up, studying my wrist where blue veins showed through pale skin. I'll make a small cut, she said. Let a few drops fall into this. Vivian had appeared beside her, holding a crystal chalice I hadn't seen before. The room seemed to produce objects as needed, like a stage revealing props. Then you'll drink from me. The exchange completes the bond. Ready? Ready. She didn't use a knife. Instead, she simply pressed the nail of her index finger against my wrist, and I felt a sharp sting. Blood welled up, 3 fat drops falling into the chalice before Lucia pressed her thumb against the cut. The bleeding stopped instantly, the wound closing as I watched, leaving only a thin red line that was already fading. My blood has healing properties, she explained. For you, at least while we're bonded. Minor wounds will heal faster. You'll resist infection, disease, minor ailments. Consider it a fringe benefit. She raised her other wrist to her mouth, and I saw her canines extend. A disturbing transformation, the teeth lengthening into predator weapons designed for piercing flesh. She bit her own wrist with clinical precision, dark blood welling up, looking black in the candlelight, though I knew it must be red. She let several drops fall into the chalice, mixing with mine. Drink, she commanded, offering me the vessel. I took it with hands that trembled slightly. The liquid inside was warm, shimmering strangely in the light. I raised it to my lips, hesitated for just a heartbeat, then drank. The taste was indescribable. My blood was copper and salt, familiar if unpleasant. Hers was everything else. I tasted centuries in that sip. Prague streets during the plague, moonlight on snow in Russian winters, the smoke of burning cities, the perfume of women long dead, the violence of countless kills, the sweetness of music in Vienna concert halls, the bitter loneliness of immortal existence. It was overwhelming, a rush of sense memory that wasn't mine yet somehow became mine in the drinking. Heat spread from my stomach outward, racing through my veins like wildfire. My vision sharpened, colors becoming more vivid. I could hear things I'd never noticed. The flutter of the candle flames, the whisper of fabric as Vivian shifted position, the ancient settling of stone. Smells intensified, roses and copper and old parchment and something uniquely vampire, a scent I now recognized as death and life combined. And I could feel Lucia. Not physically, though she still knelt before me, but internally. A presence in my mind, foreign yet not hostile. Like having a second heartbeat, a shadow self that wasn't me but was connected to me. I could sense her age, her power, the vast reservoir of experience that was her consciousness. And I knew somehow that she could sense me too, my confusion, my excitement, my barely contained terror and exhilaration. Welcome, she said aloud, though I also heard the word in my head, layered and echoing. You're bound to me now, Marcus. My familiar. My responsibility. My student. I tried to speak but found I couldn't. The sensations were too intense, cascading through me in waves. Vivian knelt beside Lucia, her cool hand touching my forehead, and I felt her presence too, secondary but real, a connection through Lucia that made the three of us a triangle of awareness. Breathe, Vivian instructed. The first moments are always overwhelming. Your system is adjusting, incorporating vampire blood into your own. It will pass. Just breathe. I focused on breathing, in and out, steady, deliberate. Slowly, the overwhelming intensity began to settle into something manageable. I could still feel everything I'd felt before, but it was integrated now, part of my awareness rather than drowning me. The connection to Lucia remained, a warm certainty in the back of my mind, but I could think past it, focus on other things. How do you feel? Lucia asked. Like I've been plugged into an electrical socket. I managed. Like every sense has been turned up to 11. Like I can feel you inside my head. That's accurate, she said with a slight smile. It will normalize over the next few days. Your human mind will adapt, incorporate the changes. For now, just accept that you're different than you were 10 minutes ago. You're familiar. You're ours. Ours, Vivian echoed, and the word felt like a promise and a claim. They helped me to my feet, steadying me when I swayed. The room looked different now, brighter despite the dim candlelight, every detail sharp and clear. I could see the individual threads in the tapestries, the grain of wood in the furniture, the microscopic imperfections in the stone walls that spoke to centuries of existence. What happens now? I asked. Now, Lucia said, you return to your life. The conference, your hotel room, your ordinary existence. But you carry our mark, our bond, our protection. We'll contact you in a few days once you've adjusted. Arrange a proper meeting where we can begin your education in earnest. Introduce you to others, teach you the politics and dangers you need to navigate. That's it? I just leave? The door will take you back, Vivian explained. When you walk through it, you'll return to the 7th floor of the hotel, to the corridor outside your actual room. Time will have moved normally out there, perhaps an hour has passed, no more. You'll be tired, confused, but unharmed. Go to your room, sleep if you can. In the morning, this will all seem more real and less dreamlike. Will I see you again? The question came out more plaintive than I'd intended, revealing a vulnerability I hadn't acknowledged. Oh yes, Lucia said, her crimson eyes warm. You're ours now, Marcus. We don't abandon our familiars. We protect them, teach them, value them. You've given us something precious tonight, your trust, your allegiance. We'll honor that. You have our word. The word of a vampire, Vivian added with a slight smile, is worth more than human contracts. We live too long to break our promises carelessly. The consequences follow us for centuries. So yes, you'll see us again. Soon. They walked me to the door, one on each side, honor guard or perhaps jailers ensuring I actually left. At the threshold, I paused, looking back at the impossible room, trying to memorize every detail. The stone walls, the crimson candlelight, the four-poster bed, the Gothic windows, the medieval artifacts scattered throughout. This was real. This had happened. I had the journal in my pocket, the pendant around my neck, the bond singing in my blood to prove it. Thank you, I said to both of them, for trusting me, for this opportunity. I won't betray that trust. See that you don't, Lucia said, but her tone was gentle. Go now. Your life awaits. Though I suspect you'll find it rather dull after tonight. I laughed, surprising myself. Probably. But I'll manage. I paused. Lucia? Vivian? I'm honored, truly. To be chosen, to be trusted with this. I'll make you proud. We know, Vivian said. That's why we chose you. Now go before the connection makes you too light-headed to walk. I turned to the door, gripped the handle, and opened it. Beyond was the ordinary hotel corridor, amber lights and worn carpet and numbered doors. Room 714 was directly across from me, my actual room, exactly where it should be. I looked back one more time. The room was gone. Instead of the vast Gothic chamber, I was looking at what appeared to be a maintenance closet, shelves of cleaning supplies and linens visible in the dim light. Lucia and Vivian were gone. The door in my hand belonged to the closet, not to another world. But the pendant was still around my neck. The journal was still in my pocket. The bond still sang in my blood. And when I closed my eyes, I could feel Lucia's presence, distant but real, a compass point that told me she existed somewhere in the city, watching, waiting. I closed the closet door gently and crossed to my actual room. The keycard worked this time, green light blinking. Inside was exactly as I'd left it, bland, corporate, ordinary. My laptop on the desk, my clothes hanging in the closet, my research notes scattered across the bed. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands shaking with adrenaline come down. My phone showed 1:47 a.m. I'd entered the wrong room around midnight. Less than 2 hours had passed in the outside world, though it had felt like an entire night in that impossible space. I pulled out the journal and the black card, setting them on the nightstand. Physical proof. Real objects. Then I touched the pendant, feeling its warmth against my chest. Real. Finally, I closed my eyes and focused on the bond, on that sense of Lucia in the back of my mind. I thought her name with intention, Lucia, and heard her voice, faint but clear, inside my head. Sleep, Marcus. Tomorrow your new life begins. I smiled, lying back on the bland hotel bed, and thought, thank you. Her response was wordless, a pulse of warmth and approval through the bond. Then she was gone, or at least quiet, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and transformed existence. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Instead, I opened the journal and began to write, documenting everything while it was still fresh. Every detail of the room, every word of our conversation, every sensation of the transformation. My handwriting was sharper than before, my hands steadier, effects of the blood bond already manifesting. Outside my window, the city lights twinkled in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Lucia and Vivian moved through that city, ancient predators in modern disguise. And now I was connected to them, a bridge between worlds, a familiar who'd chosen knowledge over safety. The conference seemed irrelevant now. My presentation tomorrow on blood rituals and folklore felt like a joke. I just participated in an actual blood ritual with actual vampires. How could I stand in front of academics and discuss theories when I now knew the truth? But that was the challenge, wasn't it? Living in both worlds. Maintaining my ordinary life while navigating the extraordinary reality hidden beneath it. It would be difficult. Dangerous. Probably eventually fatal if the warnings were accurate. I couldn't wait.